Have you ever stopped to think about how a country as small as the Netherlands managed to run a massive colonial empire just all the way on the other side of the planet? It's kind of mind-boggling. Well, today we're diving deep into the Dutch East Indies to see how they did it. We're going to unpack the 19th century system of total control that turned a money-losing headache into a giant cash cow for the Dutch crown.
I mean, that's the big question, right? We're talking about a distance of 11,000 kilometers. Back then, in the age of sail, just sending a message could take months. So how on earth did they keep their grip on the place? The answer, as you'll see, is a system. A very, very carefully designed system.
All right, so let's set the scene. Our story really kicks off right after the Napoleonic Wars. The Netherlands is a kingdom now, and they get their prized colonies back from the British. You'd think it would be a celebration, but really, it was anything but. They were walking straight into a huge mess.
So for about 15 years after getting the keys back, the Dutch tried this more liberal kind of hands-off approach. The theory was, free enterprise will make the colony profitable. Well, it didn't. It was a complete financial disaster. And to make matters way, way worse, the Java War breaks out, a massive, incredibly expensive conflict that pretty much bankrupted the colonial government. So this colony wasn't an asset at all. It was a giant money-sucking liability. The pressure was on, big time. The liberal experiment was a total failure. The bank account was empty, and they knew something had to change, like yesterday. The Dutch didn't just need a system to break even, they needed a system that would churn out huge profits for the homeland. And so, they built one. This new approach wasn't an experiment. It was a machine, methodical, systematic, and designed for one purpose and one purpose only, to make money. It was called the Cultuurstelsel, which translates to the cultivation system. And the concept was brutally simple. Instead of Javanese farmers paying their taxes with money, they were forced to use about 1/5 of their land and their labor to grow cash crops specifically for the government. We're talking things like coffee, sugar, and indigo. Yeah, let's be clear, this was not a free market. Listen to how the historian Vasseur puts it. He calls it an agrarian industrial exploitation. The government told you what to grow, where to grow it, and then paid you a fixed, rock-bottom price for it. Then they turn around and sell it on the world market for a massive profit. It was coerced labor, pure and simple. So, did it work? Oh, you have no idea. The system generated an almost unbelievable amount of cash. We're talking 784 million guilders flowing directly into the Dutch state treasury. This profit didn't just pull the Netherlands out of bankruptcy. It paid for their entire industrial revolution. It funded huge projects like the National Railway System. The colony went from being a money pit to an absolute gold mine. Now, a profit machine this huge needs a really powerful political engine to make it run. This economic system could only work if it was backed up by an equally absolute system of government. You gotta wonder, right? With this continent-sized operation going on, who's the one actually pulling all the strings? Is it the governor out in the colony? The parliament back in The Hague? The answer was way simpler and way more absolute. And to really get how this all was possible, we can look right at the legal documents, like this 2005 thesis from the University of Amsterdam that we're drawing from here. The legal basis for all this power was written right there, in black and white, in the Dutch Constitution. Article 60 says the king has supreme authority. But the key phrase here is by exclusion. That's legal speak for nobody else gets a say, especially not Parliament. And this chart just lays it out perfectly. The king? He was the CEO of the whole colonial enterprise. Total control. His Minister of Colonies wasn't really a policymaker at all. The source material describes him as basically a conduit, a pass-through. His only job was to take the king's orders and make them happen. And Parliament? Completely shut out. They had zero say in what happened in the colonies. Now, you might think with all this power, the goal would be to conquer the entire archipelago. But officially, the king's policy for all the other islands outside of Java was the exact opposite. It was a policy of abstention, or onthoudingspolitiek. The idea was, look, let's just avoid expensive wars and focus on the trade that's already making us rich. So the official word from on high was crystal clear. Consolidate what we have. Don't go looking for trouble. Don't get dragged into expensive military adventures for more land. But, and this is a huge but, here's where we see the colonial paradox. While the official policy from Europe was no expansion, the reality on the ground was completely different. Local Dutch officials, military leaders, they often just did their own thing. Driven by ambition or glory, or maybe they just thought they knew better. They'd launch their own campaigns and grab more territory without anyone's approval. That huge distance that made the king's rule absolute on paper also made it incredibly hard to actually enforce in practice. Okay, so we have the economic machine and the political control. But what did all this actually mean for the people who lived there? Well, it created a society that was fundamentally and legally split right down the middle. From the very start, the Dutch made a decision that would define everything. They decided they were not going to have one single legal system for everybody. And that choice had massive consequences. What you end up with is this system called legal dualism. If you were European, you fell under Dutch law and were tried in European courts. Simple. But if you were an indigenous person, you lived under what the Dutch called Aardrecht, which wasn't one thing, but a whole web of different local customary laws, and you were judged by local courts. You have two parallel legal universes operating in the exact same place. And this wasn't some brand new idea. It was actually a continuation of a policy from way back in the early 1800s. The stated reason, as you can see in this charter, was to respect the local traditions of the inlander, which, by the way, is a pretty derogatory term they used. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. The Dutch reserved the right to step in and overrule any local law if they decided it violated what they called universal principles. In other words, local law was respected right up until the moment it wasn't.
So let's just put it all together. You have a system of forced economic extraction. It's run by a king with absolute, unquestioned power. And it governs a society that is intentionally and legally split into two separate worlds. This entire framework, built for profit and control back in the 19th century, would go on to shape the entire future of the region for generations to come. So the question we're left with is, what kind of future was it really building?